the Data Profile Project of Jason Hodge. For this project, I utilized the school's leadership team, which is comprised of kindergarten through 5th grade teachers, as well as special education. This helped provide honest, professional feedback. This was strategic as it involved a diverse group of stakeholders and brought many different points of view to the project. As Fisk explains, it is important to recognize and celebrate the differences we have in our teams. Our assistant principal also attended this meeting. Her attendance provided insight on how this project could correlate with the school's improvement plan and foster authentic change for our school. We met as a team to set a purpose for collecting data, specifically focusing on how the data could benefit the whole school, not just testing grades. As Fisk states, there is no value in knowing the types of data that are available, but having no idea of the purpose, collection method, or meaning of the results. Since walkthroughs regarding reading instruction had already taken place, the team thought it would be a good idea to focus on math instruction. It was chosen because this data would help the school reach goals it set regarding math instruction. The school has made great gains on its reading goals and is beginning to make math a focus of improvement. Unlike GMAS or Wright Score, the data provided by the walkthroughs would benefit all grade levels, not merely 3rd through 5th grade. The data provided by the walkthroughs would provide insight into both the strengths and weaknesses of math instruction for the school. The walkthroughs conducted for reading in the fall proved to be very effective in improving how the school approaches teaching reading. The goal is to successfully do the same for math instruction. The morning of the observations, I met with the data team and reviewed the Google form that was to be used for the math instruction observations. I also provided each teacher with a schedule of the observations they were to complete. Each teacher was scheduled to complete 3 observations in the morning, 2 of which were scheduled, and the third was to be one of their choosing. We would then meet briefly before the afternoon observations, in which the teachers would complete 3 more observations. Again, 2 were scheduled for them, and the third was to be of their choosing. Even though the staff knew the observations were occurring, they did not know if anyone would be coming to observe them. This was to make sure that the instruction that was observed was as authentic as possible. It is by all means probable that some of the teachers changed their instructional methods that day because of the observations. However, every action was taken to make sure the data being collected was as accurate as possible. Triangulation was automatically provided through the use of the observations. The first way was through the fact that more than one person was completing the observations. The second way was in the fact that all grade levels were being observed. The final way was through the fact that the math observations were being conducted in both the morning and afternoon. All of these factors make sure that the data collected regarding the math instruction was as authentic as possible. As Fisk explains, if you were to make decisions based on 1 or 2 data sets where one is potentially inaccurate or wrong, you could possibly form wrong opinions and initiate processes or changes that would not meet the needs of the learners. To fully understand the data, Fisk explains that color coding helps with analysis. The first area in math instruction we focused on was the use of morning work. The data shows that many teachers were not implementing morning work in their instruction. Next, the data showed that there was some form of direct instruction in each classroom. This data supports that many teachers implement interactive journals in the classroom during math instruction. Here, we see that many of the observers did not see independent practice during their observation. However, this could be because they were not observing during that time. Many observers did not see the use of small group instruction during their observation. During the debrief, a few of them admitted that even though they stated that it was not being observed during the observation, they feel that it is not being implemented, and not just because of the time constraint of the observation. Another area the data shows we are lacking is in the use of exit tickets at the end of math lessons. Many of the trends the data team and I found were unexpected and only came after truly digging down deep into the data. This is in alignment with Fisk's statement that some data may be immediately identifiable, while others will require you to sit with the data for a while. The first part we focused on was the positive areas the data brought to light. While not focused on for the change portion of the project, the compliments were shared out to the staff during a faculty meeting, as it is important for them to hear what they are doing right. Most teachers were using the standards of mathematic practice to foster understanding. Teachers were implementing direct instruction to present new math concepts. Many teachers utilized interactive journals as a means to give students a resource they could refer back to in order to aid their learning. The next part we focused on were the concerns brought to light by the data. This would ultimately be our focus for what we could change. The first concern was that many teachers were not using small groups in their classroom. The next concern was that many teachers were not observed implementing independent practice in the classes. There was also a lack of consistency in the use of morning work amongst the classes. Lastly, few teachers were utilizing exit tickets. The data team met to discuss possible causes for all four of the identified trends. However, after looking at the possible causes for the morning work and the exit tickets, the team felt that any benefit to focusing on those would greatly be outweighed by the resources and capital needed to make the change. As Fisk tells us, do not waste the team's time if you do not plan on following through with those issues. The first trend we questioned was the reasons for the lack of small group instruction presented by the data. Questions we arrived at included: did teachers not have enough time for small group instruction? Did teachers not know how to implement the small groups? Did teachers not have the support they needed to implement the small groups? Were teachers implementing the small groups and we merely did not observe them during that time? Did the school not emphasize the importance of the small groups? Did class sizes hinder the use of small groups? The second trend we questioned the reasons for was the lack of independent practice found during instructional time. These questions included: did the lack of a district-wide math curriculum hinder the use of independent practice? Did student behavior prevent the regular use of independent practice? Did the teachers not know how to use independent practice time effectively? Were the teachers using independent practice and we just did not see it during our observations? Did the lesson run too long and there was not enough time for independent practice? The first thing the team did was think of all the options when choosing which trend to address and the changes to make. Fisk directs us to use our teams to brainstorm ideas for data-informed change. This is beneficial as everyone has their own ideas for solutions. After weighing the pros and cons, the team decided to focus on the implementation of small groups. Of all the trends, this seemed to be the most feasible and the one that would have the greatest impact on student learning. The data team focused on possible solutions and changes that could be made to improve the identified trend. For the lack of time, the team thought we could work to revise the schedule to provide time for small group instruction and offer planning time for teachers. For teachers that did not know how to implement small groups, the team discussed the school should provide training on how to use small groups in math. For teachers who felt there was not enough structural support, the team decided to have the academic coach be involved in helping and supporting teachers as needed. In the chance small groups were not observed because of time constraints, the team could conduct observations at different times of the school day. In the chance that it was not a school-wide priority, a school initiative could be created. For the concern about class size, the school could implement a departmentalization model. Of the 6 possible changes to improve the trend, the data team decided that 4 of them would be feasible to improve the use of small groups in math instruction. Revising the schedule through the use of extended planning would give teachers the planning time they needed to create lessons to be used during small groups. Providing training would allow teachers to see how small groups should run and what activities would be appropriate to use during this time. Involving the academic coach would give teachers a support system to help them when they are learning to implement the small groups. Arguably, the most important change would be to create a school initiative. As Bernhardt explains, school-wide goals need to be set with the whole staff before the actual writing of the plan commences. Fisk explains that the key is to set a realistic and achievable goal. For this reason, the team and I felt the best goal for the action plan was to, as a school, increase the use of small groups in math. The first step in the action plan was to make the staff aware of the goal to increase math small groups. Before any real change can take place, it is important for teachers to know the goal we are working towards. The second step was to acquire math resources and manipulatives to use during the small group instruction. The school has received the math manipulatives, and they were inventoried and given out to the teachers. Next, we revised the lesson plan format. With all that teachers are required to do, it is important that the lesson plans be changed so that documentation of the use of small groups would be easy for the teachers. Then, administration met with each grade level to explain the expectations and how to document the use of small groups in the lesson plans. Before teachers could be expected to implement the small groups, it was imperative they understood what was being asked of them. The next step was to provide teachers with an extended planning time to plan for the math small groups. The teachers needed to have a time dedicated to planning for the small groups. During this time, the teachers were able to sit with the academic coach and set up their small groups. After getting extended planning time, each grade level submitted their action plan to school administration. They were then given feedback on their small group plans. Finally, more walkthroughs will be conducted to make sure that the small groups have been implemented with fidelity. With a short turnaround time, only a few walkthroughs have been conducted. However, the data team will continue to conduct these observations to assess the use of small groups in math. The first part of putting this plan into action was meeting with the teachers to share the results of the observations. The teachers were much more accepting and excited to hear the findings. The data team then shared the goal of increased use of math small groups. Where we expected to be met with skepticism, the teachers were pleased with the idea of getting support to use small groups in math. Over the next 2 weeks, the data team, along with school administration, carried out the remaining steps to facilitate the small groups. Even though this is a change that will take months to fully implement in the school, the data team conducted a few follow-up observations. We definitely saw an increase in the use of small groups in math. We found there to be an increase in student interest in math. Some even said that the small group time was fun and their favorite part of the day, outside of recess, of course. We also found many teachers reaching out with ideas for small group activities. This is in line with when Fisk tells us that teachers may just need a little encouragement to be involved. The data team met and discussed how to get teacher feedback on how successful they feel the math small groups have been implemented and what they need to continue. As Fisk tells us, we should not be afraid to hear from stakeholders, especially as they are the ones directly affected by the changes that were made. Most importantly, the students are getting their needs met through the use of the small groups. Not only are academic needs being addressed, students are now growing in excitement for math. The results of the observations and increased use of small groups were so successful that our school administration is looking to tie it to the school improvement plan. The complete long-term results of the implementation of the small groups is still not fully known. Only time will tell the full extent of them and what the next steps for improvement will be.